What does the price performance of computation, the automation of software development, and Tesla's full self-driving have to do with each other? Well, it turns out quite a bit. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I'm going to refer to a couple of posts from Elon Musk and Joe Rogan and Andrej Karpathy. I will leave links to all these in the description, of course, so you can look at them at your leisure. I'm going to start with this graphic that Ray Kurzweil posted in a Joe Rogan interview. This is a really interesting graph down here, and what it shows is basically a straight line for 80 years of price performance per computation unit in terms of constant 2023 dollars. So you adjust the dollars and you look at the amount of computation that can be done for $1 basically, and you can see that it looks like a straight line. Now, it looks like a straight line, but this is on a logarithmic curve, so this is actually a perfect exponential basically. And just real quick, if you want to look at the difference between the two of these things, here on the right you have what Kurzweil shows on a logarithmic scale. You have what looks like a straight line, but if you look at it on a linear projection, it actually shows a very, very steep exponential curve. So that's basically what we're looking at on this chart here, is this shows a very, very perfect exponential curve in terms of the amount of compute per dollar. And down here in the 1930s, you get 0.00001 computations per second per dollar. Whereas up here, you can see in 2023, we've got about 100 billion computations per second per constant dollar. And in 2025, I assume that this is projected, they're looking at a trillion, so another order of magnitude faster. So this number shows the amazing growth in raw computation speed over the past 80 years. And you can see that no matter what the technology, the growth in computation power has been very consistent for about 80 years. And then of course we have Kanekoa the Great pulling out a quote from Ray Kurzweil here from this clip. Again, I highly recommend you watching it. I'm not going to post that here, but again, the link is in the description, so definitely watch the post. Anyway, he says, we're not quite there yet, but we will be there, and by 2029, it will match any person. I'm actually considered conservative. So this is really interesting coming from Ray Kurzweil, of course. He predicted this back in 1999, I believe. He predicted 30 years from then, it would be 2029, we would have the artificial general intelligence singularity that would happen. And he used to be considered absolutely crazy. People were like, no, it's going to be 100 years at least or more. And now all of a sudden he's looking rather conservative. And you can see Elon Musk has chimed in on this and said AI will probably be smarter than any single human next year, as in 2025. And by 2029, AI is probably smarter than all humans combined. So of course, the definition of artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, etc. is a little bit slippery, but Elon is basically saying that by next year, an AI agent will be smarter than any individual human being on the planet. So in other words, if there was another Albert Einstein hanging around right now, and there are a few of those folks out there, that this AI would be smarter than that person by the end of next year. So we're looking at like 20 or 21 months from now that the AI will be smarter than any individual person. That seems fairly reasonable to me at this point. Of course, I made a joke post after this that said I predict AGI by April of this year and ASI by June of this year, because even with these crazy predictions, it seems like every year we're having to go back and back and back in terms of the timeline for all of this stuff happening. Now, Ray Kurzweil has been very, very consistent about 2029, so we'll see. He might end up being right. And depending on your definitions, Elon Musk might be saying the same thing. If he's saying that, the singularity happens when the AI is smarter than all humans combined, that he's thinking is 2029. But he believes it's going to be smarter than any individual human being by the end of next year. So that's a pretty bold statement. And that moves us to a post by Andrej Karpathy referencing this announcement from Cognition, which is a new startup. They have created Devin, which they call the first AI software engineer, and the demos are pretty darn impressive. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to use this myself yet, but this is pretty amazing stuff if it's actually true. So again, definitely do watch this demo. It's definitely worth a 2-minute investment. It's not a lot of time. But what I want to focus on here is Andrej Karpathy's take on this and automated software development and how it relates to full self-driving in particular, because I think that's really interesting given the fact that he used to be the head of Tesla's FSD efforts. So Andrej says, automating software engineering. In my mind, automating software engineering will look similar to automating driving. In other words, in self-driving, the progression of increasing autonomy and higher abstraction looks something like, first, the human being performs all driving actions manually. That would be classic cars, 30 years ago, something like that. 2, then the AI helps keep the lane. 3, then it slows for the car ahead. 4, then it also does lane changes and takes forks. 5, then it also stops at signs, lights, and takes turns. And 6, eventually you take a feature-complete solution and grind on the quality until you achieve full self-driving. And if you look at this, most modern cars these days can do up to about step 3, at least if it's a reasonably sophisticated car. It can slow for the car in front of it, in other words, traffic-aware cruise control. So that's where they are, whereas Tesla is clearly on step 6, which is grinding on the quality until you achieve full self-driving. They're in that chasing the 9 sort of stage 6. And I want to go back to full self-driving in a minute, but first I'm going to finish his post. There is a progression of the AI doing more and the human doing less, but still providing oversight. In software engineering, the progression is shaping up similar. First, the human writes the code manually, which is the classic way of doing it. Then GitHub Copilot auto-completes a few lines. Then ChatGPT writes chunks of code, and that's basically where we are today, or at least yesterday. 4, then you move to larger and larger code diffs, e.g. Cursor Copilot++ with a demo there on YouTube. And then 5, Devin is an impressive demo of what perhaps follows next, coordinating a number of tools that a developer needs to string together to write code, a terminal, a browser, a code editor, etc., and human oversight that moves to increasingly higher levels of abstraction. And then importantly here, he says there's a lot of work not just on the AI part, but also the UI UX part. How does a human provide oversight? What are they looking at? How do they nudge the AI down a different path? How do they debug what went wrong? It is very likely that we will have to change up the code editor substantially. In any case, software engineering is on track to change substantially, and it will look a lot more like supervising the automation while pitching in high-level commands, ideas, or progression strategies in English. Good luck to the team. And this, by the way, got me thinking. I replied to this, great take, thank you. Might I suggest something a bit more like a heat map when it comes to understanding and debugging? You have to think that eventually those with no coding experience, analogous to those who don't have a driver's license with autonomous driving, will want to be in control. And if they have no coding experience, the software will have to present them with information that non-technical humans can understand. Perhaps an AI agent will have to be created to act as a go-between between the coder agents and the human agent. Think a project manager who has to explain what's going on to a non-technical CEO of a company. Swarms of agents rears its head yet again. Anyway, really cool demo and a glimpse into our collective futures. So yes, indeed, software engineering is going to change substantially in the next couple of years. And Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA, recently said that he would not teach people to code anymore because it's not going to be a necessary skill. Now, I don't know that I completely agree with that, because I think coding teaches you a way of thinking about problems and about being very, very specific. But in terms of actually learning a language, learning something like C++ or Java or Python or whatever, that really is probably going to go out the window, and relatively quickly, given the fact that these tools are developing really, really fast. So I stand by my statement that there's going to need to be another agent, another AI agent that's the thing that is the go-between between the swarm of coding agents and the human agent, because there's going to have to be something that's able to translate people's desires into something that code can do, especially when you have a non-technical person doing it. It's very different if you have somebody who's used to coding and they can be very specific in their desires because they understand what the code is going to have to do eventually. It's really, really different when you have a human being that doesn't understand what's going on and they give kind of a sloppy instruction. They're like, I want a website that does this. And then this agent is going to have to either figure out what the human actually means or ask leading questions to figure out what the human means in order for the other agents to be able to perform the action and actually create the code that the user wants. I'm actually reminded a lot of non-technical directors when I do design work for theater or film, when they say like they want something, but they don't know even how to express it. And so I try to help them express it. And then a lot of times they're like, no, I'll just tell you when I see what I want and I'll tell you what I don't want. And that's a very frustrating experience. But effectively that AI agent, that go-between, is going to function as that designer. It's going to be the agent that figures out what the human being actually wants in a very specific manner so that they can pass it on down to the rest of the code building team. But the really interesting part to me right now is that this circles back to full self-driving. We've got a convergence of computational power increasing radically, and Elon's been very specific about the fact that Tesla has been compute constrained for forever, basically. They haven't had enough compute to be able to do the end-to-end full self-driving training that they need, but by the end of the year, he expects that they will have enough compute and, in fact, some spare capacity. And that has to do with this exponential growth in compute capacity. And that gets us back to Andrej Karpathy's step 6 of autonomous driving, which is you take a feature-complete solution, which most of us think full self-driving 12, finally the end-to-end full self-driving stack is, and you grind on that quality until you achieve full self-driving. And most of that grinding is just throwing more training data at it, throwing more compute time at it, refining the architecture, iterating on the training, and all of that has to do with compute power, and it also probably has to do with better code development. In other words, using AI to help bootstrap the understanding of the architecture in order to have that architecture be able to progress faster and be able to chase more of the nines in terms of full self-driving quality. And of course, while Andrej Karpathy is only talking about full self-driving here, this will definitely transfer to Optimus and other autonomous humanoid robots as well. So what does all this mean? All of this means that we could be getting to autonomous driving and certainly autonomous humanoid robots a lot faster than people think. I know all of us, including Elon Musk and many other people, including me, have been very, very optimistic about this for a long time, and we keep thinking it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. But I think this is actually the year, looking at full self-driving 12 and where it is right now, and it really could come down to just more compute and using AI to help bootstrap our capabilities of understanding and iterating on the software itself to create better architecture and to train on more specific cases. We may be looking at the end of this year for actual autonomous driving that is good enough that a human being really doesn't need to look at the road anymore, and you could actually have a non-licensed person in the driver's seat. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that regulation will allow that to happen by the end of the year, but technologically that means it should be able to happen by the end of the year. As per usual, I'm probably overly optimistic, but what the heck, I might as well make another prediction and say end of 2024, we're going to be looking at a car that's actually able to drive itself 99.9% of the time under most conditions with no need for human intervention. Is there still work to be done? Absolutely. This is something where we need better planning and better hierarchical understanding of situations and better world models and such, and I'm actually going to do a video on that very soon within the next couple of days, so be sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and if you enjoyed this video, please do like it so other people can find it, and in the meantime, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.